Hey everybody, Arthur here. Quick announcement before we go to the video's topic properly. I have a couple of games to give away, but I'm gonna do so on the channel's Discord server, which I invite you to join. Come hang out, talk about games. I post about games news and trivia I find interesting there. A lot of other people do the same. There's a bot there covering all limited physical games announcements from dozens of sites. It's turning out great. So join us there and do it soon, because in the next few days I'll start the process for the giveaway of this very cool game here called After Image. This is a gorgeous, fresh new Metroidvania which is getting decent reviews, and there will be another game to give away also this month. Now back to the topic at hand. Game collecting has become expensive. We all know that, but how expensive? That's what we're gonna find out in this series. And let me tell you, I plan on going through every single game console, highlighting the 3 most expensive games on each one. I already completed the research actually, because at first I wanted to make this into a small series with like 3 videos only, but I found so much to talk about, so many crazy, interesting, obscure, rare, and outrageously expensive games, many that I had never heard before and blew my mind, that I decided to turn this into a big series. The top 3 lists are not considering graded games, variants with different covers, nor special editions, unless the game inside is meaningfully different from the standard copies, so that way we're only considering expensive physical games and not expensive extra stuff like in special editions. I'm also focusing more on NTSC US copies, but different regions will also be considered, especially if they are the only version of the game. We're gonna go backwards in time on this series, and I am purposefully skipping the current 9th generation to give it more time to develop itself, but I'll go into it in the end. Oh, and by the way, I know that the Switch is technically considered an 8th generation console, but it's Nintendo's current system, so I'm gonna include it in the 9th generation list in the future. So stay tuned to the next episodes, cause having done the research, I can guarantee that it keeps getting more and more interesting the more we go back. Alright, let's get into it. Welcome to the channel. This is From the Void. Alright, the first system we're looking at is the one I've been talking about the most recently, the 3DS. But most games here I have never talked about before. The first game on today's list is Alien Chaos 3D. This is a pretty cool little hidden gem here. It is a side-scroller shooter divided in small stages where you have to clear the waves of enemies. One cool thing of this game is that a bunch of scraps of enemies and your bullet shells get scattered around, and you can push them to the sides where a bucket will suck them in, and enough scraps will get you extra ammo for different kinds of guns. It's pretty cool. This game is okay. As an indie title, this was primarily an eShop release, but it also got a small physical print run, and then later it was delisted from the eShop, making it a physical only game with very few copies in circulation. When the eShops were announced to be closing, this was already rare and expensive, and only got worse from there. Physicals are now $400 complete in box. The cheapest current offering is going for $450. Then the second most expensive game on the 3DS is Fire Emblem Fates Special Edition. Now, like I said in the intro, collector's editions are not considered because they are only more expensive because of the extra goodies included in the package. The only exception I make is when the actual game has extra stuff not found in other versions, and that is why this special edition absolutely makes the cut. It contains the very coveted special cartridge that not only comes with both scenarios, Conquest and Birthright, but also Revelation, which is nothing less than the final part of the game, extremely important and could only only be otherwise obtained through DLC, and those are officially not available anymore. So this is now the only legit way to access Revelation other than buying a 3DS from someone who has Revelation downloaded, I guess, which is not ideal to say the least. Now, this special edition was not so limited as one may think. In Japan alone, almost 43,000 copies were sold. We never got the exact number in Western countries, but the thing is that in all regions, it sold out within hours. Fans are very much aware of the inclusion of all scenarios in the cartridge and how much better that is. So this became a coveted item, and those who have it are not willing to part with it for cheap. And that is why it is among the more expensive games on the system, currently going for almost $500 as per price charting, and even loose copies are over $400, reflecting the importance of the DLC inside the cartridge. And I am positive this will increase in price as time goes on. This is one of the few games that I actually have on my collection. I got it before the stores closed. It was expensive, but much less so than now and in the future possibly. Before we get to number 1, I want to make one honorable mention, Guide Louvre. Yeah, this featured as number 1 in my most expensive 3DS games that also had a digital version list. You can check that out in the corner or in the description. There are lots of interesting 3DS games there, but as per the rules of this list, if the system is region free, I would only consider the cheapest version of the game, which is why this title doesn't make the cut, because even though the 3DS is region locked, Guide Louvre is the only quote-unquote game that is region free. Yeah, really crazy, right? That means that there is a worldwide region that any 3DS can run, and they only used it for this. Super lame. But anyway, Guide Louvre doesn't make the cut because the French and Spanish versions are much cheaper than the English one, which goes for over 400 bucks and rising sharply now that the digital version is no longer available officially. And there are two even more expensive versions, the Japanese region locked one and the Japanese region free one, that takes the cake, going for truly insane prices. So there you have it. Honorable mention goes to Guide Louvre. Now, moving on to the most expensive 3DS game. Most of you already know what it is, so you can now feast on the glory of its amazing gameplay. Barbie Groom and Glam Pups. Yeah, Barbie is the most expensive game on the 3DS. Okay, for what it's set out to be, a pet grooming game where you also get your pets to participate in little beauty and skill contests, this is not terrible. The graphics are actually pretty good, and for a kid into this kind of thing, it could be fun, I guess. But for a seasoned gamer, the gameplay here is real weak and the progression is not great either. You'll be doing a bunch of mini games to get your pets groomed, wearing ridiculous jewelry, which probably configures animal abuse in real life, and learning skills by doing very basic inputs with the stylus. It's really shallow, and even though there is some kind of progression as the pets get better at the skills, it doesn't amount to much, just as you would expect from a Barbie game, I guess. So yeah, there you have it, a pretty poor game that has versions for Wii and DS that go for dirt cheap, so only hardcore collectors looking to complete their 3DS set are interested in this. Barbie Groom and Glam Pups had a problematic publishing specifically for the 3DS version, and only in the Americas region. Europe and Australia have more widely available versions, but that's no good for most collectors looking for a complete US set, considering that the 3DS is region locked. For some reason, THQ relinquished the publishing rights of the 3DS version to a small publisher who only released the game in Canada, so it had a small print run and not in the US, making it rare. Nowadays it's going for maddening 2,787 bucks as per price charting. Loose copies are much less expensive for 400 and something. Still ridiculous, but much less so. I couldn't find recent sold copies on eBay, and the only complete offering right now asks for your left kidney or 5,000 bucks. And now we move on to the still current PlayStation 4, beginning with 1001 Spikes. This is a lesser known game from this publisher and a pretty great platformer with nice 8-bit style graphics and tight controls where you control a spelunker guy searching tombs and ruins and such. So this game is very heavy on traps. Traps are all over the place, very devious, very frustrating. So if you're an impatient player, this is not a game for you. But if you like a good platforming challenge, this one will not disappoint. Pretty awesome game. Like I said, this is a Nicalis published title that was never even announced, but they already produced some copies and distributed them exclusively to Sony employees as gifts before the announcement even happened. This took place back in 2019, and so far no announcement, no release date for the physicals was revealed, nothing. Well, except not nothing, because of course some of these copies got out into the wild and are being sold online for crazy prices. This happened to other Nicalis games too, by the way, not just this one, so you're gonna see more Nicalis on this list. The company even stated a press release on Twitter explaining the situation, and since then they also confirmed to be basically sitting on the games. No one knows when or if they plan to release them still, which is weird because these systems are approaching the end of their life cycle, but they also haven't confirmed to have cancelled the release of these games, and even came out saying that those are not gonna be limited copies. If they release, they'll get a wide distribution, allegedly. So I strongly advise not to spend crazy 650 bucks on one of those. I would wait for the official release. Moving on to Tamashi. This is a platformer. There's a bit of puzzle in figuring out how to pass some obstacles here and there and the order in which to do so, but it's much more platformer than puzzle. It also could fit the horror category. The whole setting, characters, lore and story are very creepy. It even has some jump scares here and there. The controls are tight and the level design is impressive actually. Tamashi is surprisingly solid. Now, both this game as well as the next one were made by a very unusual company, to say the very least. Limited Rare Games. No, not Limited Run Games, Limited Rare. Their business practices are unorthodox most of the time, and in many cases straight up look like scams. For instance, they recently promoted a whole campaign around NFTs with the promise of granting free physical games in the future to whomever purchased them. I mean, if that doesn't scream scam alert to you, I don't know what would. To be fair, as far as I could tell, so far they always have delivered on their promises, honoring all their sales and such, but still this is such dangerous territory that I would not recommend anyone jumping in. Also, NFTs suck big time, at least how they've been used so far. Furthermore, the interactions between the company and their clients are downright disrespectful at times. Many aggressive tweets. But in my opinion, and don't take me up on this because I have no way to know for sure, I think it's all part of their FOMO mantra. They create this whole mess around themselves to get attention, while at the same time selling sketchy looking physical games through sketchy looking means as well, so that all of it becomes shrouded in doubt and suspicion, but in reality it's all legit, so they're not gonna have any legal problems or anything, but it results in more attention and interest from avid collectors in the games that they release. And it's working, because nowadays their games always sell out. That was the case with Tamashi, which I think was the second game they made physically after the other one blew up in popularity. We'll talk about that in the next entry. Tamashi was made in small quantities and is now one of the rarest and most expensive games on the PlayStation 4, going for over 1,000 bucks, which would, by the way, put this in the first place, but I beg to differ to price charting in this case, because recent sold copies on eBay went for considerably less, 590 bucks for the cheapest one I found. The most expensive game on the PlayStation 4 got a lot of attention, and it's a pretty interesting story. We're talking about Poop Slinger. Yeah, Poop Slinger is not a terrible game. It is actually somewhat enjoyable gameplay wise. It's a gallery shooter. Pedestrians are walking around peacefully, completely unaware of the menace about to strike them. feces. There's a whole progression system here. You score points and cash to unlock new stages, new slings, new poops, and new modifiers of many kinds. It's kinda cool, but also that's it. It's a repetitive and simple game. It's fine as a distraction, a very disgusting distraction, but okay if you can grab it for cheap. Definitely not worth the ludicrous prices it commands physically. Now, the reason why it's so expensive, it's what's most interesting about it. This is yet another title released physically by Limited Rare Games, the sketchy company also behind the physical release of Tamashi. Poop Slinger was their first game though, from what I could gather, and as an unknown company that has a very sketchy looking site with even sketchier looking logo and name, glaringly ripping off limited run games to the point that to this day people still think that they are one and the same, but because of all of that they didn't sell a lot of copies of Poop Slinger, predictably so. Only 84 copies were sold. Then later on, word got out with the help of YouTubers that this was a rare game. That's what started the whole FOMO mentality that Limited Rare embraced wholeheartedly. Some people even point to a possible conspiracy between Limited Rare and some of the YouTubers in order to generate the initial push and hype. Once people saw the YouTubers' videos, they became aware of the company, and any subsequent physical game they ever produced since then has been sold out. So yeah, I don't know whether or not there was a conspiracy between YouTubers and this company, or if Limited Run and Limited Rare are one and the same, but whatever the case may be, this only goes to show how this whole fear of missing out mentality of modern capitalism is manipulative. It's fine to be a collector. Most collectors are just gamers really passionate about their games, but everything needs balance in life to be healthy. Otherwise, it becomes a vulnerability that some companies will likely exploit. One thing to note is that even though Poop Slinger only sold 84 copies, there certainly are hundreds more out there, unless they destroy them, because Sony requires companies to produce at least 1,000 copies of physical games. So those may turn up in the future, or already have and are slowly being sold on eBay, where a copy went for 2,700 bucks recently, and that makes me once again disagree to price charting in this case, as it's placing this game close to the $1,000 mark. There are two current offerings on eBay, one for 6,000 and another for ridiculous 18,000. I also found two other copies sold on heritage auctions that went for thousands of dollars each. Next, we move on to the Xbox One. First, we have Attack on Titan 2 Final Battle. This is a Koei Tecmo game, famous for their Musou titles, but in this one they focus on the giant creatures from the anime. The game plays pretty well, it is very interesting for fans of the show, but can become repetitive and dull after a while. This is a solid 7.5 as per most critics. Price charting states that this is going for close to 90 bucks completing box, but I saw a lot of offers on eBay, both current and sold, going for 75 bucks, sometimes even a bit less. The only logical reason I could find for the increased prices is that the digital version goes for 60 bucks and never or almost never gets a discount, so whoever prefers physicals will see no reason to get the digital. Then next up is Dead by Daylight Nightmare Edition. Now, as I said, the only time I'll allow special editions on the list is when they have extra stuff inside the physical media, and that's the case for Nightmare Edition. This is actually just a regular case of the game, but it comes with 3 DLCs inside the disc, which is a godsend for collectors when companies do that. I wish it happened more often, but that's not the only reason why this version got expensive and tends to increase in price as time goes on. This is currently the only way to access the Stranger Things DLC since the license expired in 2021. It lasted less than 2 years actually, so if you want to play as the Demogorgon, Nancy and Steve on the Xbox One to change things up nicely in this multiplayer focused horror game that set new grounds in the genre, by the way, pretty interesting game, Dead by Daylight, this is the only way now. Boxed copies go for a bit over 100 bucks, while loose copies are still expensive for 83. Now this is the average on price charting, which is the site I mainly use to rank these games. However, I could find offers from European countries going for way cheaper, even considering the shipping costs. So there is currently a window of opportunity to grab this cheaper, I think. And the most expensive Xbox One game I was not expecting. It's GTA 4 and Episodes from Liberty City. This is a compilation of GTA 4 and its two standalone expansions called Ballad of Gay Tony and The Lost and Damned, all inside the disc. So that's why this special edition makes the cut. If it had mere voucher codes inside, I would not allow it. Get out of here with voucher codes. I don't need to explain any GTA game, so let's completely skip that part. And the reason why this is so expensive, it's because it received low print runs on the Xbox One. Not on the Xbox 360 though, only here. But collectors will want to have all games on the system, and especially ones that include the DLCs inside the disc. So now it goes for over 350 bucks as per price charting. But people may not have caught up to this, since I can see many copies being sold for less than half that price on eBay. Still expensive though. Next, we have the other system that Nintendo abandoned in terms of digital stores, the Wii U. The third most expensive Wii U game is a European exclusive physical title. It did not get a US release. This is Shmup Collection. This was made in limited quantities by Pixel Heart, and it's a pretty cool collection of games I had never played before or heard before either. There are 5 games here: Armed 7 and its remaster Armed 7 DX. These are fast-moving horizontal shooters where you take control of a mech. It's kinda challenging to get the controls for aiming with the mech's main gun, but a cool challenge, and you pick among a bunch of options for the loadout. Definitely enjoyable couple of games here. Then Cetaceus and Cetaceus Next. Those are also side-scroller shooters where you pick your weapons before the stage. Very fun to experiment with your weapons, and these two are the best in the collection in my opinion. And finally, Wolf Flame. This one is a top-down shooter, another very enjoyable one with interesting power-ups and enemy patterns, as well as a pretty tough challenge. Great collection here, but not to the tone of over $200, which is what price charting puts this game at, while eBay also has similar prices in recent sales. More expensive than that though is the Book of Unwritten Tales 2. This is a point-and-click adventure game, a pretty good one, and it's also found in many other systems. But the Wii U version received a much smaller print run, so when people realized how rare copies of this game are, prices started climbing to the point that now they go for close to 300 bucks. eBay recent sales are right around that number too. And to close the Wii U section, I gotta clear out of the way a game that didn't make the cut because it's a special edition of sorts that doesn't even contain the game physically, only a voucher code, and that is Pokemon Rumble U. This thing goes for well over 1,000 bucks. This package is a European exclusive as far as the West goes at least, and it's a collector's edition that came with 2 random Pokemon figurines that you could use to scan in-game, similarly to Amiibo, and these are the reason why this Rumble U business is expensive beyond belief, so per the rules, it's not officially making the list, but worth a mention for sure. With that out of the way, the most expensive game on the Wii U is Devil's Third. This has gained a lot more attention and has been getting a cult following and the curiosity of many recently. Devil's Third is a Wii U exclusive and an over-the-top action hack and slash mixed with a shooter game. It's one of those completely mindless action games, full of dumb cinematic action scenes, but it definitely falls into the guilty pleasure bucket. It is fun, but some later boss fights may be too frustrating, so be advised. Devil's Third is going for 361 bucks as per price charting, while eBay recent sales were even above that, indicating that the game may be rising in price, which makes sense as the eShops just closed, and it's a shame that this is no longer available digitally as it went for much more affordable 30 bucks there. Next, we move on to Sony's tragically abandoned wonderful handheld, the PS Vita. All the games here are expensive for the same reason, Nicalis. The first one is VVV. This is an excellent game. It's like a mini Metroidvania of sorts, with an interconnected map, but totally focused on the platforming, which is simple and genius all at once, where you switch gravity upwards or downwards as you please. Some of the challenges are insanely hard, but the game as a whole is fast-paced and enjoyable throughout, with excellent level design. This is extremely expensive because Nicalis didn't officially release it, at least not as of the making of this video. They never even announced it, but produced the physicals and handed some of them out to Sony employees as gifts. We know this because they said so in this tweet, like I mentioned in the PlayStation 4 section. Of course, some of those found their way to the market and have been selling on eBay and elsewhere, reaching over $1,000. Notice that as time goes on, the prices go up and up, with the latest recorded sale going for $1,700. Now, as these things are produced in bulk, we can all but guarantee that there are hundreds and hundreds of copies of these games sitting on a warehouse somewhere. It may be that Nicalis struck a deal with some other company to sell them at the right time, like once the digital stores close, or once they can be sure that these will be the last ever physical Vita games to be released, or some other reason, who knows. So I would strongly advise not to pay these mad prices for any of these Nicalis games. Next is once again 1001 Spikes. This is also one of the most expensive games on the PlayStation 4. I explained it there, so I won't go about it again. Same reasons for the prices, the screw up from Nicalis. But this one is going for even more expensive prices, $1,200 on average. And finally, the most expensive game on the Vita is reaching just ridiculous prices, The Binding of Isaac. This game is pretty fantastic, made by the same developer of Super Meat Boy. In case you haven't played it, it's a roguelike dungeon crawler, though that description may have a bad connotation to it, while this game is simply excellent. The progression is amazing, with a seemingly infinite amount of items to find, modifiers to your skills, enemies to beat, and a creepy crazy story that you have to see. It's insane. And much like the previous entries on the Vita, this is expensive because Nicalis didn't release it officially, at least yet. Though in this case, they did put out a teaser with a physical Vita box and cover, but so far nothing except that they gave out some courtesy gifts to some Sony employees that were released into the wild because of course they did. But The Binding of Isaac seems to have been given out in fewer quantities. Not a lot of sales took place and some went for obscene prices, making price charting average the price of a copy to almost $4,500. Wow. Once again, I strongly advise not to buy these and instead wait for the possible official release, because Nicalis may be just waiting for the right time to do it, and really, what's the risk here? Overpaying? You would already be doing that anyway. And that's it for today, but stay tuned for the next episodes. I'll go back in time, and with each generation there are more crazy rare, expensive, obscure and infinitely interesting games to discuss. Seriously, I've already done the research part and there are some games that I had never heard about that blew my mind. So stay tuned for that, because with the research done, these videos will come out a few days apart only. Once again, do join the Discord channel to hang out and participate in the discussions and in the giveaways. I have a couple of games to give away this month. If you enjoyed the channel, please consider joining the Patreon to keep the lights on here so that I can keep bringing interesting obscure games to you. Thank you so much to all of you who already do. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.